there are certain topics that I will not mention on this show. Because 90% of sanity in this time lies in which stories you accept as legitimate and which stories you don't. Everything lies in that choice. It's more important than what analysis you take and what take you formulate and what, thesis you can extract from it. It's more important that you choose the right stories to accept into your headspace, into the writer's room of your heart and your mind and your imagination. Because everything you kind of deal with, everything leaves an imprint. Everything. It doesn't mean you should be hyper cautious or anything or not have fun and goof around. But anything you take seriously, or even for a moment, anything you take morally, you weigh in on it philosophically, anything that requires actual, legitimate thought from you leaves an imprint. You emit that thought into the world, and worthless as it may be, you had to turn a certain way to form that thought. So it's important not to dwell on really fucking wacky or downright evil storylines, let alone take a horrific position on them. But it's not horrific positions that I'm most alarmed by at this moment. It's the fact that so many people are ready to jump in a lake of fire. Here's an example of a news story that's worth your time and your attention, even your advocacy. The case of Daniel Penny. Daniel Penny, a young man who finds himself in a situation that many people, basically 100% of the population of the city of New York City and anyone who has visited that city, a situation that all of us have increasingly found ourselves in the last few years, as crime and vagrancy have been legalized and sponsored. I've been in that situation. I've described it on this show. Everyone's been in that situation, and the people who are most frequently in that situation, that's that danger in public, where they're afraid for their fucking lives. The people who are most frequently in that position are the weakest people. Women, seemingly outwardly weaker people. Those are the people, little tiny Asians, who are the weakest. It's a problem that affects the weakest most of all. Therefore, it is a problem that must be completely shunned by the empathy havers and the empathy witches. So this young man finds himself in that position where a vagrant, don't care his backstory, don't care about any of it, don't take any glee in what happens, Don't think about him with any sort of animosity at all. It just happens to be a vagrant screaming violent threats and looking quite capable of carrying them out, and looking quite out of control with himself and quite unhinged. And in the process of protecting his fellow citizens from this man, a bad thing happens. The man passes out and later dies. End of story. Everybody go home. Thank you for protecting us. Thank you for risking your life to protect these women and these weaker men. Except it wasn't the end of the story, because we live in a extremely fucked up period of history that we hope is now changing for serious. We live in a period of history where a person could have as much power as DA Alvin Bragg has in a city like New York, and as much power as prosecutor Yofan Mofan, whatever the fuck her name is, has in the city of New York. And the two of those people could stand so much to gain in their own sense of righteousness and for their own political power, so much to gain in the fact that this obvious case of self-defense involved a white man and a black man, and seizing on that opportunity opened a case against Daniel Penny for manslaughter. And this young man, this former Marine, I think, had to be in court and had to be subject to a 1.5 years worth of insults, of vitriol and hatred from all the usual suspects, from protesters organized by BLM. Hello. Around his courthouse screaming guilty by the stupidest, all the hacks, by all the charlatans, by all the mountebanks. Bonfire of the Vanities. He had to lose 1.5 years of his life. Wonder if he might be locked up because of these fucking creeps. So, because it's not enough. It's not enough that he must, as a unavoidable now cost of his bravery, that he must live with the fact that he is, most likely he killed a man. He has to live with that, which any normal person finds a heavy burden to bear, no matter how trained they are in military combat. But here was a guy, Shy, who was telling the judge on TV today that he would have served 1 million days in court. He would have gladly done it, rather than have to live with the fact that any harm had come to the people in that train. If he didn't act. It's a perfect way to put it. It's a well-crafted statement which seems 100% genuine and is correct. And it's a travesty that this man was tried. And so this was a story that, isn't interesting because of the evidence. He's 100% innocent every step of the way. All the tests, all the eyewitnesses affirmed it. All the evidence was in favor of his acting completely heroically for the public. Not even a single iota of contrary evidence or contradicting evidence. It's all hocus pocus by the DA. Bullshit this, chokehold this, fuck you. So, of course, I celebrated and on top of that, judicial corruption. I'm no fucking legal expert, but it sure seemed like the judge was trying to trick the jury into, when it seemed like the manslaughter charge was toast, which would have ended the whole thing, tried to trick them into getting him on the second charge for negligence. Negligence, imagine that. Imagine the man who stepped up to save his fellow citizens being charged and imprisoned for negligence. To have negligence be the name of his act. To stand up and subdue the maniac. Negligence. I mean, it couldn't be more obvious, right? So this is a story that organically happened. It happened because there was a threatening person and a brave man, and that the brave man stood up. That's why it happened. And we know about it because, of course, of the unfortunate fact that he was persecuted for it. Otherwise, we might not have even known about it. It's that organic. Most such heroic acts go unrecorded. So it's especially valuable then to accept this storyline into your newsroom, to your, the newsroom inside, and to pin it on the wall until there's a resolution. Advocate for it. Take the right position. Certainly don't treat it like a facts and logic, like you're doing an autopsy with all the evidence when it's clear that that's a waste of fucking time. But pay attention to it. Celebrate the right outcome. Not guilty of all charges Monday. And commend the jury, and specifically commend whoever wavered on that jury, for whatever low IQ, retarded reason, wavered on that jury initially, but who saw through the judge's act and punished it with a not guilty verdict. Because it seemed like the jury was hung on the main manslaughter charge. It seemed like there was a hung jury going on. And so, when the judge made the judge's move and gave him a weekend to ponder the lesser charge only, they came back and they said, fuck you. Now I see what's up. Seems like that's what happened, and they should deserve our applause. Bravo. A story that is worth having in your system. This is also a story worth having in your system because of what it reveals. That's ultimately what determines whether a story is, worth your time, is how much it reveals and how valuable is that revelation. This case, much like the Rittenhouse case before it, much like the George Floyd case before that, was one of those flashlight under the couch type of moments where you see all the roaches. A whole bunch of roaches come to light. Because roaches can't help being roaches. They chose to be roaches at some point, and that's their new nature. So they can't help it now. So, what are the bystanders, the roaches, what are they going to do when presented with a story like this? A clear case of self-defense, very unexpected in our time and very not very frequently heard of. Self-defense, blatantly politicized prosecution based entirely on the obvious accident that the other party was black. Just was it a racial thing? Were the Roaches treated? It wasn't a racial thing. The racial thing didn't emerge at all, except by the most predictable sources. The most predictable types obviously pretended to be hung on the racial thing, but it wasn't about the racial thing. It wasn't merely the dishonesty to go with that lie that the DA was trying to pull. It wasn't merely that. That had already been exposed by Rittenhouse, by George Floyd. By now, if you have any sort of mental awareness, no matter what race you are, you're aware, left, right, or center, you're aware that all news stories about race are fake. If you have any kind of clarity of vision at all, you know that by now. And the people, nevertheless, the people who know that, nevertheless chimed in. To condemn Daniel Penny. Of course, AOC said that the streets would be safer if we arrested more Daniel Pennys. All of that complete and total subversion of the truth happened. Why? Because everyone who rooted for Daniel Penny to get convicted is a coward who would never do what he did in a million years, said so out loud. They've all said the thing that every New Yorker knows to do is just be quiet and move on. They literally declared themselves to be cowards, righteous cowards. And that Penny was guilty for being brave. There's no crime like courage to these people. They can't live with themselves in the vicinity or presence of courage laughing them at the face. So that's another interesting, little tidbit about this case. Cowards prosecuting a brave man for the crime of being brave. It's still mind-blowing that we had to sit through that. For a year and a half, a poor guy had to lose it. I hope he gets rich. He seems very shy. Seems like he's really not in it for the attention. I hope that some guys get together and put some money in, into something, give him, let him start a business that he really wants to start. That's what I want for him. I'm getting a nice little boost in that direction. And I haven't even mentioned how good looking he is, because frankly, you don't need to hear that from me. We don't need to hear that from everybody. It's great that he is extremely gorgeous and intoxicatingly so. But let's not get a little too carried away and be a little too fucking thirsty every time we open our mouths. Because if he were a fat schlub, he would have deserved an equal amount of admiration. So let's not get too carried away with all our cooming. There's plenty of things that I would offer him. Don't get me wrong. good-looking guy. But as an example of what I mean, we can turn to this other case. A case that I am only going to mention now as the exception for why I have the rule about keeping certain stories just humorlessly out of my consciousness, just shutting it down. And when I see it on the timeline, even I'm prone sometimes to chime in with a joke or something. You know, I'm prone. I'm disgusted with myself. I try to delete it. There's a little bit more leeway on the internet, but it's still, you want that shit off your timeline. You don't want that shit on your timeline. So, as we can see from the other case, we have the most inorganic type of crime ever, and somehow it is being almost universally celebrated among a certain type of political know-it-all. Left, right, even center. And there's an outpouring of meme energy from all the lamest NPCs on Earth and everyone else toward making this a big, juicy story. And it came at exactly the moment we were about to get, or supposed to get, the Daniel Penny verdict. It's just amazing how these things are sent to fool us all the time, to fool the people. It's wild. To confuse the matter instantly, just like with something else that happened this year that I'll get to soon on this show. Immediately, this new thing pops up as like a fake gay, made in China or India version of the Daniel Penny story. Does a, kind of like weird replica of it. Not even a version of the story, but a meaningful political killing in New York, where in this case it was a premeditated assassination in cold blood of some healthcare company's CEO over some completely incoherent ideological outrage over the healthcare system, which we haven't heard a single word about in the 4 years that Joe Biden has been president. Haven't heard that word healthcare once since he got in there until now. Now, the first thing to say about this case and this whole story is that I don't want to be talking about it at all, as mentioned earlier. I immediately sensed that decaying facade on the story that indicated how fake it was. And when I say fake, I don't mean that I know that this is some sort of an authored conspiracy, which many people are now, toying with this idea that it's in some sense this is a somehow fabricated or manipulated event, a la MK Ultra, blah, blah, blah. I find that line of inquiry to be offensive in its passion. Too much passion for such a stupid story. IMO. I hate to be a joy kill. I hate to rain on everyone's parade. I hate to shit on everything. But that's what I have to do right now. I have to shit on everyone. I just have to condemn and very didactically judge and morally condemn everybody's behavior. And everyone who knows it, who sees the same thing I do, feels the same way. It's disgusting. It's a disgusting display. And no, it's not justified by doing MK Ultra intellectual Olympics. It's not. But could be correct. I don't know. Don't particularly care. Could be correct that it's not just fake, but also fake. But let's just assume it's just fake, and that, once again, somebody who is clearly mentally ill, clearly missing some marbles, clearly in a bad state, decided to do something to get a bunch of attention, to become a star on the internet in which he dabbled and got his ideas, to become the talk of the news, to become a free healthcare martyr. And everyone is sort of just somehow commending this behavior. And I don't need to get into the details because I don't care. It doesn't matter. I don't want to know who the CEO was. I don't care. I mean, not to, you know what I mean. I don't care. It's not the point. I'm not trying to debate the personality of the guy that he targeted, or even have to, mention that the kid who killed is from some rich family, Ivy League school, went to some Ivy League school, and the murder victim, the CEO, was apparently from a very humble background, blue collar, blah blah blah. I don't even need to mention that. Who cares? The important thing to understand about a story like this is that, and by the way, there's exceptions. There's always going to be one or two people who get the let him cook hall pass, either because they're being super funny, like our friend, very chill dude, Max. He's been posting some real bangers about this one. I think I earned a similar immunity during October 7. But apart from that, everyone who's engaging in this and who is getting, earnestly curious about this and speculating and formulating theories and, not either tacitly or explicitly rationalizing and justifying what happened and even admiring what happened and all of this. I don't know the facts of the case. I don't need to know. All I know is that this is going to lead nobody nowhere. You're not going to arrive at any sort of deeper understanding of the world by studying this and following this, forming opinions about this case. That's my prediction. I can sense it right away. And even if you were to gain some knowledge, it wouldn't be worth it. Why is it not worth it? Because as we can see from all the people who have suddenly raised their voices in admiration of how hot this little twink Kramer is, where it's like all these long descriptions of what his semen must taste like by these egregious online oomphy gays. Horrible, long, just endless in a world that so seldom finds anything nice to say about men, in a world that basically none of these people lusted after Daniel Penny, as Adam wisely pointed out today. They couldn't lust after a guy who actually did something heroic and is actually good. despite the fact that he makes it very easy to lust after. All these people suddenly getting so excited about this. And an assassination of a symbolic target that has no hope of accomplishing anything, inspired by memes and inspired by meme ideology and inspired apparently by whatever. In my opinion, it's all just ideology. It's all just free healthcare, Bernie bullshit that has generated the narrative world in which this Ivy League grad thought that this would be his claim to fame, which it is. For fuck's sake. And even some conservative friends were feeling it. And then they saw his latest statement included the phrase, lived experience. There's no there in these cases. And what I see is, when I see everyone just leaping to get involved in this story, you know, as if they haven't seen these sort of tricks pulled before with other bullshit storylines. What I see, and I'm no expert on this stuff. I mean, I'm not an expert on the specifics of this stuff. The generics, yes. But I'm not an expert on satanic rituals. But this sure feels like one to me. All around. Feels like a satanic ritual. It has that emptiness in it. That it has that outward, it's the outward passions, the inner emptiness. That like something is missing. This is an utter exercise in utter spiritual futility. And what could be more satanic? Because when you work yourself out, when you wear yourself out in an activity that's spiritually futile, you become exhausted of the spiritual realm, and you shrink away from it. You get spooked away, demoralized. You get demoralized when you involve yourself in this, and it eats you, spits you out with nothing to show for it, nothing. Just like Bernie Sanders. And you're demoralized if you're someone like me having to witness this on my timeline, because there's no escape of the demoralization ritual. And I hate to be humorless, but if you dance with Satan, be prepared to fuck with Satan. And if you fuck with Satan, be prepared to deliver Rosemary's Baby. And don't fucking cry during the pregnancy. Speaking of Rosemary's Baby, let's check in on Radfem Hitler and Lindy Man. Again, this is an exceptional episode in which I'm naming something that I would not otherwise wish to name. Radfem Hitler now goes by RFH because even she can no longer bear to name herself. Now, 2 weeks ago, Lindy Man, an excellent poster, became the latest in a long line of disgraceful pundits to promote the Twitter account of Radfem Hitler, RFH. They had dinner, and he used his platform to promote her. And everyone who has done that, so far, inexplicably had that thing on Substack or something. Their fortunes have taken a terrible turn soon after a curse has visited them, and not 2 weeks after, his rat femme moment, Lindy Man has to wake up to this shooter having been on the record, DMing him and reading his stuff, and including a tweet from that day or so, or the day before, about how, a lot of young men with no jobs might as well do something. Big city, might as well do something. He had one of those posts, which he's now deleted. And all of which is, and I have nothing against him. I like his tweets a lot, overall. But everything you do has, especially when you have a following of any kind, everything you do has consequences. You cannot, there's no empty. You can offer candy, you can offer treats, just have fun, no harm, no foul. But when you mess with black magic, shit can happen. And so now he's being memed as the, the whisperer of the murder, which is not fair, but that's not the point. And the reason I've been so adamantly opposed to the promotion of RFH is that RFH traffics in exactly this sort of satanic ritualism. If you don't know who I'm talking about, don't find out. Just take my word for it. This poster who basically takes all the critiques of women that are posted by men online, subs the word woman in them, and posts them to kind of to shit test men and demoralize men. Her entire shtick. Just posts lies that are meant to make you feel worse, make the world worse, and be bitchy and think she's funny. And that's all it is. It's all it is. And it sucks. And it sucks hard. And it promotes evil, and it sucks. And when people are enchanted with her, it's just like how they're enchanted with this evil, shitty murder. When they should be enchanted with a fellow like Daniel Penny. And as a result of their whimsical capacity for enchantment, there will almost certainly be copycat killers. And it will oh so certainly not feel so great when they emerge. No matter what you think of the industries of their victims. So I am here to warn you. Be careful with your enchantments. You have been listening to Filthy Armenian Adventures.